Hello, everyone, and welcome to another episode of Speak Up. I'm Ryan, and I want to extend a heartfelt thank you for choosing to spend your time with us today. We know how valuable your time is, and we're committed to making every minute here count as quality time that helps you on your English learning journey. Today, we're diving into a topic that many of us encounter: the habit of translating word for word in our heads when speaking English. Have you ever caught yourself pausing mid-sentence because you're busy converting your native language into English? That moment of hesitation can really disrupt your flow and make your conversation sound stilted. In this session, we're going to clearly define what word-for-word translation is, explore why it naturally occurs, and examine how it interferes with the smooth, natural exchange of ideas. We're here to help you transition from this mechanical process to a more intuitive, direct way of thinking in English. By the end of our discussion, you'll have a better grasp of this habit and feel more empowered to move past it. Plus, we'll introduce some tips on how to stop translating in your head in a way that feels natural and straightforward. So, stick with us as we unravel this common challenge, and let's work together to make your path to fluency a little bit easier.
Hi, everyone. I'm Priya, and I'm truly excited that you're here with us on Speak Up. Thank you for giving us a piece of your day. We promise to make this session worthwhile by sharing insights that will help you speak English more naturally. Today, our focus is on understanding the practice of word-for-word translation. This is when you convert each word from your native language into English one at a time, which might seem like a safe strategy at first, but it often leads to pauses and a choppy way of communicating. This habit can hinder your ability to express ideas fluidly and keep up with the natural rhythm of conversation. In this segment, we're breaking down exactly what word-for-word translation means and why it tends to happen. We'll also discuss how this approach can interrupt your natural speech flow and what you can do to shift your thinking. Imagine being able to let your thoughts flow freely without that constant stop and think process. That's our goal for today, and we'll be sharing practical insights on how to stop translating in your head to help you communicate more confidently and effortlessly. Stay with us as we explore this topic in detail and offer techniques that will truly enhance your English speaking skills.
Building on our earlier discussion, let's now focus on how word-for-word translation affects our everyday communication. When we translate every single word in our head, it inevitably delays our responses and interrupts the natural rhythm of conversation. I've noticed that this extra mental step often leads to what we call common English mistakes. Misplaced grammar, awkward word choices, or even complete misinterpretations of what we intended to say. Imagine trying to hold a conversation where each sentence feels like a puzzle you must piece together slowly. It disrupts the spontaneity and fluidity we all aim for in our everyday interactions. This process not only takes extra time, but also chips away at your confidence, making it challenging to engage in discussions without second-guessing every word. The delay can be noticeable to your conversation partner, and over time, it may even discourage you from speaking freely. Recognizing these issues is the first step in understanding why it's so important to break this habit and start thinking directly in English.
I completely agree with you, Ryan. The constant act of mentally translating each word is more than just a minor inconvenience. It really impacts our ability to connect naturally with others. When every thought goes through a translation filter, it not only slows down your responses, but also causes you to stumble over phrases, making your speech seem less spontaneous. This habit often results in those common English mistakes that can lead to misunderstandings or awkward silences during conversations. I've seen learners struggle with maintaining a steady flow in their speech because they're caught in that cycle of translation. This struggle can make you feel insecure about your language skills and hold you back from speaking English confidently. The challenge here is that by pausing to translate, you miss out on the natural cadence of the conversation, and that can be discouraging over time. It's important to see these hurdles as stepping stones. Recognizing the impact of this habit is key to adopting more direct thinking patterns in English.
Let's delve even deeper into how this habit disrupts our interactions. Every time you pause to translate, you create a noticeable gap in the conversation. This pause not only interrupts the flow, but also gives room for hesitation, which can be quite distracting both for you and for those you're speaking with. The result is a kind of stilted dialogue where ideas don't come out as naturally as they should. Over time, these interruptions build up, making it harder for you to maintain a smooth and engaging conversation. This constant self-correction and delay can significantly impact your ability to speak English confidently in real-life situations. Think of it like trying to run a race while constantly tripping over your own feet. It's exhausting and undermines your performance. Understanding this impact is crucial because it sets the stage for why shifting your mental approach from translating to thinking in English is essential for true fluency and effective communication.
Absolutely, Ryan. The challenges we face from this habit go beyond just occasional mistakes. They fundamentally alter how we interact with others. When you're preoccupied with translating each word, your thoughts get tangled, and your message loses its clarity. This can lead to conversations that feel forced rather than natural, which is a major barrier to building strong, genuine connections. I've experienced moments where I felt frustrated because I wasn't able to express myself as freely as I wanted to, all because I was stuck in that translation loop. Overcoming this hurdle is not just about improving your language skills, it's about reclaiming your voice and allowing your ideas to flow uninterrupted. By recognizing the real-world impact of these delays, you set the stage for a transformative shift in how you communicate. Embracing a mindset that encourages you to think directly in English will help you build smoother, more natural conversations and ultimately boost your overall confidence in speaking.
Let's now explore what's happening inside our minds when we default to translating word for word. Our brains are wired from childhood to lean on the language we grew up with. This is why, when we try to speak English, our initial instinct is to mentally convert our thoughts from our native tongue. This habit forms naturally because our neural pathways are already established, and switching to a new language isn't instantaneous. Over time, repeated reliance on translation reinforces these old patterns, making it seem like a safer and more familiar route. Yet, this method slows us down and interrupts our flow, preventing us from communicating as naturally as we'd like. The transformative idea here is learning how to think in English. By training ourselves to absorb and process ideas directly in English, we gradually bypass the translation stage. It's a shift that requires deliberate practice and patience, but it unlocks a more authentic, fluid way of speaking. When you start thinking in English, your words come faster, and your conversation becomes more dynamic and spontaneous. Embracing this change can help you overcome those mental barriers and ultimately build a stronger, more confident command of the language.
Continuing with this thought, it's fascinating to understand how deeply ingrained our native language is in our cognitive process. From a very early age, our brains develop patterns and associations based on the language spoken at home and in our community. This makes the habit of translating a nearly automatic response when we're trying to form sentences in English. Over the years, as we practice our new language, we often revert to familiar mental routines because they feel secure and reliable. However, this default setting can actually limit our progress. The key to overcoming this lies in building new cognitive pathways, essentially rewiring our brains to process thoughts directly in English. This is where the concept of how to think in English comes in as a transformative approach. By consciously exposing ourselves to English through immersive experiences and constant practice, such as engaging in conversation or consuming English media, we slowly shift away from our native language. This change isn't instantaneous, but with persistence, the brain starts to favor English, allowing ideas to flow more freely without the extra translation step. Embracing this new mindset is a powerful tool in developing fluency and confidence.
Digging deeper into the cognitive process, it's clear that the habit of translating word for word isn't just a fleeting challenge. It's a result of years of conditioning. Our minds, over time, become accustomed to relying on our mother tongue for understanding and expression. This ingrained behavior creates a loop where each thought is first processed in our native language before being converted into English, which can slow us down significantly during conversations. The key here is to recognize that this pattern, although natural, can be reshaped through mindful practice. By actively engaging in exercises that encourage us to think directly in English, such as internal dialogue, real-life role-playing, and even casual self-talk, we begin to weaken the old habit. This deliberate effort to switch mental gears isn't just about speeding up your responses, it's about fostering a deeper connection with the language. When you consistently practice this new way of thinking, you can notice a marked improvement in how effortlessly you form sentences and articulate ideas. It's a gradual process, but once the new neural pathways are established, you'll experience a significant boost in your overall fluency and communication skills.
Taking this a step further, it's important to understand that reshaping the way we think is at the heart of becoming fluent in a new language. Our brains have a natural tendency to fall back on what's most familiar, which is why translating each word feels like a comfortable safety net, even if it holds us back. Over time, this habit solidifies and can even become an automatic response. However, by intentionally practicing how to think in English, you can gradually override these default settings. One practical tip is to immerse yourself in environments where English is the primary language, whether that means watching English movies, listening to podcasts, or simply having a conversation with a friend. This immersion helps your brain adjust to processing information in English without the intermediary step of translation. As you start to notice improvements, your confidence grows, and speaking becomes a more natural, enjoyable experience. Remember, it's about creating new mental habits, and every moment of practice brings you one step closer to achieving that fluent, spontaneous flow of conversation. Embracing this transformative approach not only enriches your language skills, but also empowers you to communicate with greater clarity and ease.
Let's now talk about shifting your thought process, a crucial step toward achieving fluent, natural English. One effective strategy is to retrain your brain to process whole phrases rather than isolating individual words. Instead of mentally pausing at every word, try to absorb entire chunks of language. For instance, when you hear or read a sentence, focus on the overall meaning and rhythm, rather than translating each word separately. A great way to do this is by practicing with common expressions and idioms, phrases that native speakers use naturally every day. By internalizing these expressions, you create mental shortcuts that help your brain bypass the slow, word-for-word translation process. Think of it as building a library of ready-made responses that can be easily recalled during conversation. This approach not only speeds up your speaking, but also enhances your ability to respond with the correct tone and context. Integrating these methods into your daily routine will set the stage for effective English speaking tips that empower you to express yourself more confidently and fluidly. Embracing this change means actively choosing to think in full sentences and familiar phrases, gradually rewiring your brain for direct English thinking.
I completely agree, Ryan. Shifting your thought process is a game changer when it comes to overcoming the habit of translating each word. One powerful method is to focus on internalizing complete phrases and idioms, which allows you to quickly recall natural expressions without getting bogged down by individual word meanings. Instead of translating in your head, try to imagine scenarios where these expressions are used. This contextual learning helps your brain store them as whole units. For example, instead of thinking, "I am happy," you might learn the phrase, "I'm over the moon," to express delight in a more native way. This not only enriches your vocabulary, but also makes your speech sound more authentic and spontaneous. Additionally, practicing with flashcards that feature common idioms, or even engaging in role-playing exercises where you use these phrases, can build your confidence immensely. As you start to see these expressions as natural building blocks of conversation, you'll find yourself responding more fluidly and reducing the extra mental effort that comes with translating word by word. This method is a key English speaking tip for anyone looking to elevate their conversation skills.
Building on that, it's important to emphasize that shifting your thought process is not an overnight change. It's a gradual, mindful transition. One effective exercise is to narrate your daily activities in English without pausing to translate each step. For instance, while cooking or driving, try to describe what you're doing in complete sentences, letting your thoughts form naturally. This practice reinforces the habit of thinking in full phrases and helps embed those common expressions into your mental lexicon. Over time, you'll notice that your reactions become faster, and you no longer need to stop and deliberate over every word. It's all about training your mind to process ideas holistically. Also, consider setting aside a few minutes each day for focused practice, perhaps reading aloud from an English book or watching a short video clip and then summarizing it in your own words. These activities serve as mini workouts for your brain, strengthening the neural pathways associated with direct English thinking. Remember, every effort counts, and gradually, these small steps add up to significant improvements in your overall fluency.
Absolutely, Ryan. Another practical tip is to immerse yourself in environments where you naturally encounter English phrases and idioms. This could be through listening to podcasts, watching TV shows, or engaging in conversation with friends who are fluent in English. The more you expose yourself to the language and context, the easier it becomes to adopt a mindset that focuses on complete thoughts rather than isolated words. I also recommend a technique called chunking, where you deliberately practice grouping words together into meaningful units. For example, when learning a new expression, try to visualize a scenario where that phrase fits and repeat it several times until it feels like a natural part of your speech. By doing so, you create mental shortcuts that help you bypass the laborious translation process. This shift not only improves your speed, but also boosts your confidence during spontaneous conversations. Remember, it's all about retraining your brain to function in a more integrated way, one that mirrors the fluidity of native speakers. With regular practice, these techniques become second nature, setting you up for a smoother, more authentic conversation every time you speak English.
All right, let's dive into some practical techniques that you can start using right away to break free from that word-for-word translation habit. One method I find incredibly effective is the shadowing technique for fluency. With shadowing, you listen carefully to native speakers, whether it's through podcasts, TV shows, or recorded conversations, and try to mimic their tone, rhythm, and pace as closely as possible. This approach helps you internalize the natural flow of English, making your speech smoother and more instinctive. Imagine listening to a short dialogue, and then immediately repeating it without pausing to think about every single word. This practice not only reinforces your listening skills, but also accelerates the process of thinking directly in English. Alongside shadowing, I highly recommend practicing self-talk in English. It might feel a bit odd at first, but describing your daily routine, planning your day out loud, or even commenting on your surroundings in English can significantly boost your internal fluency. These exercises encourage your brain to form full, coherent sentences without the extra step of translating in your head. By incorporating these methods into your daily routine, you'll find that your responses become quicker and your speech more natural, allowing you to speak English without hesitation. Remember, consistency is key, and these techniques can help you overcome the mental blocks that slow you down. Keep practicing, and soon you'll notice a remarkable improvement in how effortlessly you communicate in English.
Continuing on that note, I want to emphasize just how transformative these techniques can be when you commit to them regularly. The shadowing method is not just about mimicking. It's about absorbing the melody and flow of the language so deeply that you start to feel it in your everyday conversation. Picture yourself watching an interview or a short story, and then immediately trying to replicate the speaker's intonation and emphasis. This practice trains your brain to pick up on natural phrasing and rhythm, allowing you to respond more fluidly during conversations. Additionally, practicing self-talk is a fantastic way to break the habit of pausing to translate. When you talk to yourself in English, you create a safe space where mistakes are part of the learning process, and you gradually build confidence in forming sentences on the fly. For example, narrate your actions as you go about your day. Say, "I am preparing dinner," or "I am heading out for a walk," and let those phrases become part of your natural thought process. These techniques are powerful because they target the root of the translation habit, helping you move toward a more spontaneous and confident way of speaking. Over time, you'll notice that you're less likely to get stuck and more inclined to let your thoughts flow directly into English, making your conversation style more authentic and engaging.
Let's explore further how these actionable methods translate into real-life benefits. When you adopt the shadowing technique, you're not just copying sounds. You're training your brain to think in patterns rather than individual words. This technique is like giving your mind a shortcut to bypass the laborious translation process. By continuously exposing yourself to native speech patterns, you begin to internalize a rhythm that becomes second nature. This kind of practice gradually diminishes the need to pause and translate, allowing you to speak more quickly and confidently. On top of that, self-talk in English reinforces these neural pathways by encouraging spontaneous thought formation. Think of it as exercising your speaking muscles every day. The more you practice speaking out loud, the more you condition your brain to operate in English without constant hesitation. Over time, you'll find that these habits work together to help you speak English without hesitation and reduce those mental translation steps that often slow you down. By integrating these techniques into your routine, you're actively shaping a smoother, more natural way of communicating, one that not only boosts your fluency but also makes everyday conversations more enjoyable and less stressful.
To add to what Ryan has shared, it's important to note that the benefits of these techniques extend well beyond just faster speech. The shadowing method and self-talk work in harmony to build a robust mental framework for English. With shadowing, as you listen and replicate the flow of native speakers, you're effectively training your brain to adopt their fluidity, which can significantly reduce those awkward pauses and the constant backtracking to translate. Meanwhile, when you engage in self-talk, you're creating an internal dialogue that's completely immersed in English. This immersive practice is like having your personal language lab where you can experiment, make mistakes, and gradually gain the confidence to express your thoughts without fear. Over time, these strategies help break the habit of translating word for word, letting your responses come naturally and without that extra mental hurdle. Not only will you notice an improvement in your speaking speed, but you'll also experience a newfound ease in handling everyday conversations. Embracing these techniques paves the way to a more intuitive way of communicating, one where you can express yourself fluidly and confidently, making each conversation a step closer to mastering the language.
Now, let's talk about some daily exercises that can truly transform the way you speak English. One of the most effective practices is to engage in activities that force you to use English continuously. For example, try speaking aloud about your daily tasks, whether you're cooking dinner, taking a walk, or even doing household chores. Narrate what you're doing in complete sentences, and if you can, record your voice to listen back later. This self-review can help you catch moments when you slip into translation mode, giving you a clear idea of where to improve. Additionally, I highly recommend setting aside a few minutes each day to engage in daily English conversation with yourself. This might feel a bit unusual at first, but it's a powerful way to build fluency and make thinking in English more automatic. Another great tip is to immerse your mind in natural English by incorporating English listening practice into your routine. Watching podcasts, listening to recorded discussions, or even enjoying content like Learn English with Movies Netflix can be immensely helpful. These resources expose you to real-life speech patterns and idioms, which reinforce the correct rhythm and intonation. Over time, with persistent practice, you'll find that these habits naturally diminish the need for word-by-word translation, enabling you to speak more confidently and smoothly. Consistency is key here. By practicing every day, you're gradually retraining your brain to think directly in English, turning these exercises into a natural part of your routine.
I completely agree with you, Ryan. Incorporating daily exercises into your routine is a game changer for overcoming the habit of translating each word. One simple but effective method is to start your day with a few minutes of self-talk in English. Describe your plans, share your thoughts, or even reflect on your previous day. all in English. This not only helps you get comfortable with forming complete thoughts quickly, but also builds a habit of speaking without constant translation. Another useful exercise is to record short monologues about different topics that interest you. Later, when you listen to the recording, you can identify parts where you might have hesitated or relied on your native language. This self-assessment is invaluable for pinpointing areas for improvement. Moreover, don't underestimate the power of immersion. Integrate English listening practice into your routine by watching shows or movies designed for language learners. Platforms like Learn English with Movies/Netflix offer a fun way to engage with the language in its natural form, exposing you to everyday vocabulary and expressions. The more you immerse yourself in English, the more familiar and comfortable you will become with its natural rhythm and cadence. Regular practice like this not only reinforces your learning, but also gradually eliminates the translation barrier, paving the way for more spontaneous and fluent communication.
Building on these ideas, let's discuss how consistency in practice can further boost your confidence. Making a habit of these daily exercises is essential. It's not just about speaking or listening in English. It's about creating an environment where English becomes the default mode of thinking. For instance, setting a dedicated time each day to engage in daily English conversation, even if it's just with yourself, can help your brain transition away from relying on your native language. Pair this with regular English listening practice through podcasts or curated video content, and you're effectively surrounding yourself with the language. When you combine these practices, you create a rich learning ecosystem that reinforces correct usage and pronunciation, much like training your muscles through daily workouts. This regular immersion helps to erase the habit of pausing to translate, allowing you to build a more natural and intuitive connection with the language. The key here is to be patient and persistent. Daily repetition, whether you're speaking aloud, recording your progress, or immersing yourself in English media, gradually strengthens the neural pathways necessary for fluent communication. It's a continuous process of growth where every bit of practice contributes to making your speech more fluid and confident over time.
Exactly, Ryan. The power of regular immersive practice cannot be overstated when it comes to eliminating the translation habit. Think of it as setting up a mini English environment within your daily life. Every small effort counts. When you talk to yourself in English, you're not just rehearsing words, you're building a mindset that gradually shifts from your native language to English. Try integrating this practice into your routine by describing everyday events, planning your day, or even summarizing articles or videos you've just seen. And don't forget to balance speaking with listening. By engaging with resources like podcasts or visual content, such as Learn English with Movies for Netflix, you expose yourself to a variety of accents, slang, and idiomatic expressions that enrich your understanding. This kind of immersion is crucial because it mimics the way native speakers interact naturally. Over time, as you make these practices a daily habit, you'll notice that the pauses for translation start to fade away, replaced by smoother, more immediate responses. Consistent exposure and practice help in creating a seamless flow of thoughts, enabling you to communicate more effectively. Remember, the journey to fluency is built on small, steady steps, and each day's practice brings you closer to speaking English effortlessly and confidently.
All right, as we move into the final segment of today's session, let's focus on how to monitor our progress and adjust our techniques along the way. One great method is to keep a journal or record your conversations. I suggest you jot down notes about your speaking experiences. What went well, where you felt you were about to fall back into translating word for word, and any strategies that helped you catch yourself in time. This kind of self-assessment not only gives you a clear picture of your progress, but also highlights specific moments that you can work on. Imagine being able to see your own improvement over time, noticing that the pauses for translation are gradually disappearing. This reflective practice is a powerful tool that supports continuous learning and helps you pinpoint areas where you can adapt your approach further. Regularly reviewing these notes or recordings will empower you to adjust your practice routine and experiment with new techniques. Ultimately, these adjustments are key to improve English fluency and even learn English fast, as they ensure that your journey toward more natural speaking is always moving forward. So, take a few minutes each day for self-reflection. It can make a world of difference in breaking old habits and building new, more effective ones.
I completely agree, Ryan. Self-assessment is an essential part of mastering any language skill, and it really helps you stay on track. I like to record my thoughts or even record short conversations with myself, then listen back to catch any slips into translation mode. This process not only shows me where I need to improve, but also reminds me of the progress I've made. When you notice that you're starting to form complete sentences in English without pausing, that's a win you should celebrate. It's also useful to mark the moments when you feel the urge to translate, so you can later reflect on why it happened and how you can prevent it in future conversations. This kind of detailed, ongoing self-assessment creates a feedback loop that fuels continuous improvement. As you consistently review and adjust your techniques, you begin to develop a more intuitive way of speaking. Experiment with different methods, maybe a new podcast or an unfamiliar topic, and see how your brain responds. This adaptive approach not only boosts your confidence, but also makes your learning process more dynamic and effective. Remember, every little insight you gain from these exercises is a step towards smoother, more natural communication.
Taking it a step further, let's talk about some advanced adjustments you can make as you grow more comfortable with speaking English. Once the basics start to feel natural, challenge yourself by setting specific goals, perhaps reducing the frequency of translation slips or timing how fast you can think in complete sentences. Experiment with varying your daily routines. For example, try recording a longer monologue on a different topic each week, or engage in more interactive sessions with friends or online partners. Then revisit your recordings to fine-tune your strategies. Notice patterns in your speech. Are there certain words or phrases that always trigger a mental translation? Once you identify those, work on memorizing common expressions or idioms as whole units. This way, you'll start to bypass the word-for-word thinking process altogether. Advanced self-monitoring also means being open to feedback, whether it's from your own recordings or from others who listen to you. By consistently tweaking your approach based on what works best, you gradually create a more natural, fluent thought process. Remember, the goal here is continuous improvement. Each adjustment you make is a building block towards speaking English more confidently and effortlessly.
And as we wrap up this segment, I want to emphasize the importance of embracing a mindset of ongoing refinement. Monitoring your progress is not a one-time task. It's a continuous cycle of assessment, adjustment, and growth. Every time you record your conversation or reflect on your journal entries, you're gathering valuable insights that help you fine-tune your speaking skills. Notice the small victories, like when you catch yourself thinking directly in English or when a conversation flows without a hitch. These moments are clear indicators that your strategies are working. Keep experimenting with different techniques, be it new listening resources or varied conversation topics, and adapt your methods as you progress. This proactive approach will not only help you improve English fluency, but also empower you to learn English fast as you become more comfortable with the language. Thank you for spending this time with us today. We truly appreciate your dedication to learning and growing. Every moment you invest in this journey makes a significant difference, and we're here to ensure that your time is both enriching and effective. Keep practicing, keep reflecting, and most importantly, keep speaking. We're proud to be part of your English learning journey, and we look forward to continuing this adventure together.